on the Fan Hotline. He is Doug Lesmerises. He is from Kings of the North. Doug, just to make things clear, I've got a headache now between Pickett, Flacco, Gabriel, Sanders, Huntley, Watson, and Ohio State. I thought things were going to be clear, but now I can't even say, is it Sayin or Kleinholtz? Tell me, who's the quarterback of this team? Help me.
Yeah, I mean, I still will be surprised if it's not Julian Sayin. I think there is some advantage to, not handing anything to the young 5-star recruit. I think Ryan Day wants to make sure that, that the guy who gets this earns it. I just think that's what it has to be, for Ohio State to kind of get where they want to go. Now, the one thing that is just, Ryan Day did compare this when asked to compare this to a past quarterback competition. He compared it to Dwayne Haskins and Joe Burrow. And in this scenario, Julian Sayin is Dwayne Haskins and Lincoln Kienholz is Joe Burrow. Burrow and Kienholz, a little more of a threat in the run game, right? Maybe a little more physical. Haskins and Sayin more the pure passer, that kind of thing, right?
Right.
And just like that's such a complicated thing because on one hand you say, okay, well, Haskins won that, Sayin will win this. And on the other hand, in that scenario, the guy who didn't win the job went on to win the Heisman, the national title, and be the number one pick in the draft. So it's like, is Lincoln Kienholz going to win the Heisman for somebody else? That's not what he means. But it was just like, it almost like threw a monkey wrench in because that was such a crazy competition. But I think in the end, it'll be Sayin. It might be similar to when C.J. Stroud took over and had kind of a bumpy first month, his first year as a starter, but by the end of the year was a Heisman finalist. But I think that's where they'll settle in the end. But I do think this is real. I don't think this is just for show that it's gone this far.
So as of right now, you think Sayin has the step ahead on the other guy?
I'm not going to pretend that I know for sure, right? You just reading tea leaves and try. Now, the other complicating thing in this is, I think, like given like what you think about Ryan Day, like more of a pure passer, accuracy, reading defenses, computer brain, right? Like that's probably what he wants. But he loved the physicality of Will Howard last year. He loved having that bigger guy that maybe you could run with him when you needed to, right? And so that's more Kienholz. So I do think a shorthand of like Sayin's more like C.J. Stroud and Kienholz is more like Will Howard, right? Well, who's a better quarterback? A quote, better quarterback, right? C.J. Stroud. Who'd they win the national title with? Will Howard. So that's a complicating factor too, right? So I'm not going to pretend I know, but I still think it's going to be Julian Sayin in the end.
Can you help me with this one too? Bo Jackson, the kid from St. V's up here. St. V's? No, what am I saying? No, from Villangelo St. Joe, who looked like the Hulk running against, like stick figures when he was in high school. Unbelievable. He lost his black stripe yesterday. First of all, will you explain what that means to everybody? And does this kid have a chance to see some time with he's behind Peoples and Donaldson, right? You tell me what that running back room looks like.
Yeah, so the black stripe is like a rite of passage that Urban Meyer instituted that they've continued with Ryan Day, that you have a black piece of tape on your helmet. And then when you officially in practice, whether you're a transfer or a true freshman, like when you show that you are truly ready to be a Buckeye, they have a ceremony, you have a big brother, and they take your stripe off. So it's like, it is some indication. The sooner you get it taken off, it's like, all right, this guy's showing something. Like you're probably not going to have a big role if you still got a stripe on your helmet, right? So It's symbolic, but it does mean something. They like James Peoples, C.J. Donaldson's the transfer from West Virginia. That feels like the 1-2 punch, but I think there's room. I think there's room for a third, right? And the thing you have to remember that, they did a great job balancing Quinshon Judkins and Travion Henderson last year as a 1-2 punch. But the year before that, they had a rash. They had, they've had years where they had so many injuries in the running back room that I wouldn't count on Bo Jackson. But the idea that if you're three, could you play a role because maybe something happens briefly or not to one of the first two? Very possible, right? So I think be excited, but don't put too much of an expectation on it because I do think they believe they have a top two.
Doug Lesmerises joining us on the Fan Hotline. You can hear him on Kings of the North. Always a fantastic listen and always smarter when I get to talk to Doug or listen to Doug as well. So wide receiver, of course, we all know Jeremiah Smith is going to be unbelievable for this team. He's a god amongst mortals. It's unbelievable watching a kid do anything. Carnell Tate there as well. Who else should Buckeye fans keep an eye out for in the wide receiver?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like, can I say Max Clare? Does that make sense? That my co-host Bill Landis and I have talked about this a lot, that Max Clare as a tight end transfer from Purdue, he's not a receiver, but he might be the guy who is best prepared to sort of fill that slot receiver workload that Emeka Egbuka had, right? Which is just who's the guy that you can throw the ball to in the middle of the field, right? Who's the guy who can run an option route? Who's the guy who can find space versus man or zone? Who's the guy who can make a big catch when you need it? And Max Clare, like, they haven't quite, Kate Stover was a really good tight end a couple years ago, but I certainly think Max Clare's in the conversation to be the best tight end in the Big Ten and maybe one of the best tight ends in the country. And so the receiver room has been so good, I think it's lessened the need to throw the ball to the tight end. But this guy's a dude. And then Mylan Graham is a guy that people should pay attention to as a second-year guy. Brandon Innes in the slot is a guy that people should pay attention to. But, my guess right now would be that the three leading pass catchers for Ohio State this year will be Smith, Tate, and Clare.
How good is this team? It's just, you look at Jeremiah Smith and you're like, oh, they got one of the best players in all of college football. And then you're trying to figure out the quarterback because, we got to get used to change. And, you get excited about Sonny Styles and Arvo. And there's a lot of guys, Caleb Downs. I mean, like, you get pumped. I think we know the defense maybe a little bit better than we know the offense. But you tell me, what do you think?
So I think they probably have the two best players in college football, which is a great place to start, with Jeremiah Smith on offense and Caleb Downs on defense. I don't even know that that's in much dispute right now. It's just such an unusual team because, when they won it in 14, they had everybody back in 15, and it was just like it's such a different year. Now they win it and they lose so much, but I was thinking about this the other day, 2015, that was the year they really lost everybody, like Ezekiel Elliott and Joey Bosa and all those guys. So the next year in 2016, very young defense, and they went out to Oklahoma in week 2 or 3. And really young defense, lots of questions, and they won that game on the road at Oklahoma in a lightning storm. And I can remember standing there talking to young defensive players. Sam Hubbard comes to mind, Tyquan Lewis, guys like that, and they were like, yeah, people doubted us. They didn't know how good we were going to be. And I think that's possible with this defense because not just Caleb Downs, but you mentioned Sonny Styles, Arvell Reese from Glenville. Everyone's high on him at linebacker. They have some edge guys who haven't played but are pretty good. So, I mean, like, Texas might be the best team in the country. Penn State, they're playing like they're 2 or 3, and they're also playing 1 and 2, right? They're playing the 2 other best teams in the country this year, in Texas and Penn State. So we have to remember they won the national title last year, but they went 10-2 in the regular season. So if they go 10-2 in the regular season, that's matching last year. So I think that's very reasonable. Get in the playoff and have a shot in December. So that's sort of my expectation for this team. Like, how good are they? I don't think they're going to go 12-0, but I'm super interested. And Jeremiah Smith and Caleb Downs are a great place to start.
All right, Doug, let's go to the Michigan side of things. The sanctions handed down today by the NCAA feels like a real slap on the wrist. Are we looking at this the right way, or is there an actual punishment we're missing?
Yeah, I did read the entire 78-page report just for you guys because I know you're doing a show.
God, you're my hero.
You did not read that entire all 78 pages. Come on, you didn't cliff notes it a little.
Come on, reading a report. Oh man, I love reading reports.
Dude, lives for
about college football. Like lawsuits and finances, that's why everyone loves college football.
No one gets more excited when the NCAA goes to Congress than Doug.
So we did a big series on our Kings of the North channel with 5-part series called the 25-Year Winter. That was a 5-part narrative podcast about why between 1998 and 2022 the North only won 2 titles and the South won the rest. And one of the things that we concluded is like the North kind of didn't try hard enough. That the South was win at all costs and the Big Ten and the North were not. What this 78-page report outlines is a win at all costs mentality from Jim Harbaugh. They viewed their own in-house compliance as either a nuisance or the enemy. They didn't care about following the rules. And the NCAA says they did enough to get a 2-year postseason ban, but they're basically out of the business of doing that. So they're going to financially penalize them as if it's a 2-year postseason ban, but they didn't get it. And they also did enough to lose 8 scholarships, but they're not going to do it. because there's so much changing with roster limits and scholarships. So they're going to financially penalize them as if they got an eight scholarship reduction. So I think that for history tells you they did enough to get a 2-year postseason ban and lose 8 scholarships. But then the NCAA just didn't give them those penalties. So if you're a Michigan fan, I think you feel good. No postseason ban, no vacated wins. If you're not a Michigan fan, I think you look at it and say, well, the NCAA said they did it, and they deserve those penalties that they didn't give them. So is everybody kind of mad? Is everybody kind of happy? Probably, right? I mean, there's a lot of frustration, I think. But, like, they did it, but the NCAA kind of is out of the business of penalizing programs that way. And then you have to have a conversation with yourself. I did a lot of research for that 25-year winter, reading old NCAA infractions reports about the SEC. And the thing you would find is that the SEC didn't care. They broke rules like crazy, which was some indication of, like, we're just trying to win, man. We don't care what rules we break. So do you want your program to operate that way or not? Is it required to operate that way to win at the highest level? Like, it worked. They won. They didn't only win because of that. They had awesome players. They had a bunch of draft picks. They were supremely talented, but they also did this. So I'm out of, everyone's yelling at me, right? This kind of thing, you make nobody happy. But the NCAA's conclusion, not my conclusion, not yours, was they did it, and they kind of deserve these big-time penalties, but we didn't give it to them. So do with that what you will. They won it, and now we're on to 2025.
Big picture, Big Ten. Penn State the team to beat? Ohio State the team to beat? Oregon maybe a little still? I don't know. I think it's interesting to see Penn State up there.
Yeah, and it's one of those things. As you view that, are you a person who just says they haven't done it? James Franklin hasn't won big games, so I'm not going to believe it until I see it. And I understand that line of thinking. They're also more experienced and more talented and have better coaching than they've ever had under James Franklin. So, like, this is their year, and maybe you lean into that. I do think they've been a very talented team, but when you look at, like, James Franklin's beaten Ohio State once, right, in a decade. Has Penn State ever been the more talented team in that matchup? Like they had Saquon Barkley, right? They had good players. They had Chris Godwin. They had some really good players. But have they ever been more talented than Ohio State? Probably not. Are they more talented this year, veteran and talented combined? Maybe. So I think it's reasonable to look at Penn State that way. I think I still would not pick them to come into Columbus and win in that regular season game. But you don't, just like Ohio State last year didn't beat their rival, won the national championship anyway. I think the idea that Penn State does not beat Ohio State in the regular season and has a great year anyway is very much on the table. And that could include a rematch in the Big Ten title game. So bottom line, 3 Big Ten teams should make the playoff teams: Penn State, Ohio State, Oregon. And then I think 8 Big Ten teams could make the playoff teams, which means in my 20 years of doing this, I think this is the deepest the Big Ten has ever been.
Of the 8, who are you most excited to watch this year?
I do believe in Illinois. I think they're almost kind of getting overhyped, but veteran offensive line, veteran quarterback, great secondary, 2 guys up front who can get after you with the pass rush. And then Washington, really good young quarterback. Their offensive line stunk last year. It'll be better. Great running back, great number 1 receiver. They're a real team. And Ohio State plays both those teams on the road. So in the middle of the year, they're at Washington and at Illinois. So it's a reminder to people that one of those things is hey, the Big Ten's deep this year. The Big Ten has more good teams. It's I think that's great. Also makes it tougher for teams like Ohio State and Penn State and Oregon, right? So it's just one of those things that I'm not for an Ohio State fan, it's hey, they could lose one of those games. And it doesn't mean Ohio State's terrible. It means that the rest of the conference is actually kind of rising up. But I think Illinois and Washington are both pretty good.
I thought the crazy story last year was Indiana, because I just spent so many years just forgetting about them. Are they real? Is this? Is it real or is it not real? You tell me.
I mean, they smushed together 2 teams last year in a very unique way, that he brought half his team from James Madison and a bunch of impact guys who mattered, and then they kept some good guys from Indiana. They have all Big Ten level players, all JMU guys on all 3 levels of the defense still. On the defensive line, at linebacker, and in the secondary. They're real. Their quarterback's better than last year. Curtis Rourke was awesome last year as a MAC transfer. Fernando Mendoza, transfer from Cal, is probably going to be better. Their running back should be just as good. Their receivers are still good, right? Offensive line, they're pretty good. Like, I don't think they're going away. I think they can stay with Curt Cignetti. He's a real dude. I think they'll work the portal really well. I think Indiana can firmly stay in that second tier of the Big Ten. They're not going to be Ohio State, Penn State, or Oregon, but can they stay in this fight with other like programs at that level? I think they can, and that includes this year. Illinois, Indiana is a huge game at the end of September to help determine who's going to be maybe that fourth Big Ten team. But yeah, I don't think Indiana was a flash in the pan. I think it was. Now their schedule's much tougher, so I think they could be as good of a team and be 9-3 or 8-4 instead of 11-1. But I don't think they're going away.
Just kind of an off the beaten path question. I'm just curious to hear your answer. Is this one of the worst times ever to be a high school senior trying to play big time college football your first year in college? Last year, this year, like it feels like it's a really bad time to be a senior.
We're mostly out of the COVID years. There's a couple like seventh year guys hanging around, but I would say last year was probably the previous 2 years was probably the worst. Still, when there were just dudes. When it was just, I mean, Dylan Gabriel was 6 years in college, right?
Oh, we know.
So, like that was, so I mean, obviously, so that's we're kind of at the end of that. We're at the last fumes of the extra COVID year really mattering for guys. And then on the other hand, it's like, I don't know, like you're getting paid.
No,
you might get some money in your pocket. So it's like, maybe it's a little harder to get on the field. The portal brings in guys before, teams can fill gaps in the portal without having to promote guys from within, but you're doing it with some money in your pocket thanks to NIL and revenue sharing. So I think there probably were worse times when you were putting your brain and body on the line and not getting paid.
Doug, as always, thank you. Quick prediction, Ohio State, Texas.
I'm going to go with Texas for now, but I would like to see how the quarterback battle shakes out. And they also have some offensive line. Like they have options on the offensive line. You got to see how those starters shake out. But I'll take Texas for now, but it doesn't mean I don't think Ohio State's going to be good.
Kings of the North, my friend. Thank you, Doug. We love talking to you all the time. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
There you go. Doug Lesmerises, Kings of the North.